Hey everyone, and welcome back. This is another Design Cuts session. It is so good to see everyone, and I am excited. We are welcoming a first-time guest of the show, Dan Flores, aka Delta Tango Mike. How are you?
I am doing really, really well. Super happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you. And what are you going to be teaching and sharing today?
Well, I am going to share a bit of my process when I create characters using vector brushes. And to me, it's very important to use vector brushes or a vector process for my artwork because I like making shirts and merchandise, posters, banners. And so we have to be able to take a piece of artwork that you draw digitally and blow it up to whatever size you need. And so vector provides that the file type that you can then transform it to whatever size you want and still have the crispy, sharp lines. So anybody who likes to create artwork, and it doesn't have to be character art, it can be anything, but that you want to be able to use that artwork in many different sizes, then vectors is the way to go. So I am going to share a bit of my process today.
Love that. All right. Well, would you like to share your screen? And I can't wait for the community to see this. It's a really cool piece we're going to be working on today.
Yes. Let's go. There it is. This is a sketch of one of my characters. I want to say it's my character because I drew this character, but the reality is this is a Aztec goddess, and her name is Coatlicue. She is the Aztec goddess who gave birth to the moon and stars in Aztec mythology. So, you know, it's we have our stories. My parents are from Mexico, so a lot of my artwork is inspired by the mythology of Mexican culture, and so this is one of those pieces. And I call my art style in my technique in my world where I create these characters Azteca Moderno, which means modern Aztec. And so I'm bringing like the comic book influence, the mythology influence, street art influence, everything that I've ever done with my art. I kind of mash it all together, and that's what we're looking at. So this character, it is about women's empowerment because March is Women's Month, and so she is a strong goddess, very powerful, and she does not play games with people. Like, she's serious. And so she has the thank you. So she has the symbol on her hand, and she takes no prisoners. So when we're looking at this piece, let me see. There it is. This is the rotate. I'm trying to remember which buttons are which.
We're in Fresco right now for everyone.
Yes. So yes, I will explain that too. Yes. Yep. And so this is in Fresco, but this actual sketch, I started it in the Surface Pro with an app called Sketchable. And so, to be honest, I will use any program in any device to draw. If I can figure out a way to draw with it, I will do that with that art program. And so I like sketching really fast. Fresco does have sketching and pencil brushes, and so I will pick up the iPad or the Surface or any device. And right now I am on my Cintiq, so this is a big screen in front of me. And so I will sketch it out. And this is what this sketch was initially done on Sketchable, but I bring it into Fresco so that I can then create my vectors. And so Fresco has vector brushes. On the left-hand side, you have 3 different types of brushes. You have the pixel brushes, you have live brushes, which includes oil and watercolors. I do not touch those. I've never taken the time to learn how to use water brushes properly. I have experimented with water brushes, but we don't talk about that artwork. And yes, all right, that's good. And then the third brush is my favorite, the one I use, and those are the vector brushes. And so just to look, the first one is pixel brushes, and you have a ton of brushes, which also allows you to bring in brushes that you have in your Creative Cloud account. And if you have a Creative Cloud account with Adobe, then you have access to Kyle T brushes. And this artist named Kyle T Webster is super amazing and talented, who created a ton of brushes, which I know that Design Cuts has a ton of brushes also available in their store, which is cool because I love collecting brushes. And sometimes
something cool. We worked with Kyle in the
Mm.
very early days when I started the company, and we watched the process as he got the deal with Adobe, and that was such a big moment in the creative
Yes.
community, right?
Yes. I love, this is what Artist King is about. Loving to see artists succeed with their talent, with their career, and while engaging the community at the same time, so we can all rally together to see each other's success. That is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
So if you have the Creative Cloud account, you have access to all the brushes that Adobe gives you, and so not only do you have pixel brushes that are already in Fresco, you also have access to pixel brushes from the Creative Cloud, so you can bring them in. Now, I am a sketch artist, so number one, I was born with a pencil in my hand, so I've been sketching and drawing all my life, and so I need to be able to sketch out my ideas pretty fast so that I can see whether or not this is what I want, and adjust composition and so on. And so I pretty much, in the pixel brushes, stick to the pencil. That's my main thing. But because I want my artwork to be in vector, that's when I jump into the vectors brushes. And so now we have a few brushes to select from. And I'm going to make a new layer just so that we can play around with this. The basic round is exactly what it says, is a basic and round. It does respond to pressure. I love that. But it has the round end. It starts with the roundness and it ends with the roundness. I guess you call that the end cap of the line. But the second one, it has that taper. And so just so change our color so we can see a little bit better. And so when we're when I'm drawing digitally, and especially when the digital inking, I like to have that tapering that it mimics the ink on paper. So when you draw on paper, you're gonna have the thin and thick lines based on how hard you press on the paper, and how soft the pencil is, and a whole bunch of little things. And so I like to have that tapering. I love seeing, and then it responds to speed. And so I've been using these vector brushes, and especially this one, for a long time, way before Fresco, because Adobe started created a couple mobile apps way back when the iPad first came out, and it was called Adobe Line, and then Adobe Ideas, and I forget which one came first, but that's a long time ago, and then Adobe Draw. And Adobe Draw included these brushes. And when I first started playing with these brushes, I was like, who draws like this? What is this? And but as time went on, and I practiced and I practiced and I practiced, I was like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. Like, sometimes you feel like, as an artist, you want to translate your traditional work into digital work and be exactly the same, and the tools to react the same. And that's not going to happen. Even working from the Cintiq to the iPad to the Surface, you feel like, I should be able to draw what I draw the way I draw on this thing. And the reality is there's going to be slight differences in tools, in the hardware and the software. And so it's best to just try out that what you have, and then see what new techniques you develop, what new art styles you develop, how to give your artwork a fresh new look that you had not seen before, because you weren't using these tools. And so, I guess that's my way to looking at it, to admit that, what, this is how this works, so I'm gonna have to figure it out. And that's what I did. And so now when I sketch and draw, boom, I jump into my vector brushes, and I've already started working on this piece. I actually stream very often on Behance and on YouTube. And so if you find me, DaCreativeGenius, that's a whole nother, I have like a bunch of names. then you have seen me work on this last night, and I was live on Behance for 4 hours. All right, so spending an hour with you is comfortable to me because I can go on and on and on.
We got another 3 hours there if we need, right?
That's right. So here's my techniques, right? I do the sketch, and if I was sketching this in here in Fresco, I would do the same thing that I'm doing now. Just go ahead and get your figure, boom, get your body going. I like to work with shapes. Number one, when it comes to character art, and today it's about characters because I love drawing characters. I start with shapes, and some people do the skeleton. You can do the skeleton or stick figure if you want to, and that's cool, right? That could work. I also do use that technique also, especially for when I'm doing some action. Bam, bam, bam. Just do real quick. Start. Bam. There you go. Start adding some joints and so on. So you can do the stick figure technique or the shapes technique, and either depends on the pose and what I'm after. I'll try either one. But understanding anatomy is super important when working with characters. And I don't care what kind of art style you're using, is having an understanding on how the body moves and how the body is put together. We see bodies every day. I see my body all the time, and so it's just taking note of some of those things. Now, for me, of course, I started drawing a long time ago, and before we had computers in every household or in every pocket, and so my answer to learning anatomy were comic books. Okay, if you ever notice, Batman and Spider-Man, they wear very tight clothing, and so when you see those drawings, you can see like all the muscle groups, you can see the body movements. And I was a big fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger, still am, he's cool. But back in the day when he was a bodybuilder, go ahead, you were gonna say something?
No, I was just I'm a fan of Arnie too. He's a pretty cool guy.
Yes, yeah, very cool guy. And so, but he was like huge. And if you look at like the Conan movies to this day, he was super big and huge. And so looking through magazines like that, and I'm sure there's plenty of other, I have not paid attention to any more bodybuilding in a long time, but those are like amazing resources to see and how the body is put together, how the body moves from one angle to another, how the body is composed of different joints and muscles, certain bones, and so if you pay attention to those things, you're like, okay, well, here is a bicep, here is a deltoid, here's the chest. I don't know what the chest name is called, I forgot. And then
pectoral.
boom. Pectoral, that's right. Yeah, yes. And so then you start adding those things, and all of a sudden, that's a body. Now, of course, our style is going to matter a lot, and I like to play around between realistic and stylized. Stylized allows me to go real crazy with body styles and proportions. That's it. That's the word. So when you start drawing a character or start using this technique, you can play around with that and take your time to get to the point where you can draw realistic and in full proportion. I think like there's a comic book thing that says, a body is supposed to be a certain number of heads. I don't remember and I don't know. That's just because I just go with what I like, and but understanding proportion in where let's real quick here. Here's the waist. Here's the knees. There's the thigh. The hand reaches that far to the thigh. There's little things that give your character a realistic proportion, no matter what world they live in, no matter if it's manga, cartoon, comic, graphic novel, paintings, fine art, is that there is some level of proportion that is going to help your character look more realistic. And so there you go. Like real quick, like I just did that sketch. I start with body sketch. And if you check out my stream from Monday on Behance, I actually started my sketch on Monday similar to this. Then my next step from here is to create another layer. Let me turn off the layer from before. Select this layer. My next step in this process is to then do the drawing again, but this time now I'm adding more realistic, it's still stylized, but more realistic elements to the drawing. And then in this case, you know, I start adding the face, go ahead and add the ear. Now I'm making the neck and shoulders, and I'm working my way through different parts of the drawing that are good. Then I'm going to clean it up so that eventually I can add the things that the character is going to have. And so I like pouches. Another thing is pouches. You know, I was there in the 90s when Image Comics came out with all their amazing titles, including Spawn. And guess what? All their comic characters had pouches. And
get a nice utility belt going on.
Yes. And of course, Batman is my super favorite. So there's no telling how in those little pouches that he carries on his waist, he has a tent, he has a bow and arrow, like he has a ton of tools. Like
some spare change for the parking meter with the Batmobile.
Yes, that's right. It's like how, I don't know. It's fantasy. It's made up. So I'm okay with that. And so, but that's what I do. That's what I do with my next sketch. And so this process of initial bone structure to shapes to then some detail, it can go between 3 layers or 10 layers. Because sometimes we get stuck on a particular thing and a particular part of the body or whatever, and it's like, oh, that's not it. And you draw it again and again and again, and you're like, oh, no, that's not it. Now, I am a big supporter of reference images. Please, please, please find some reference images. You know, find things online that you can look at. There's plenty of websites with poses. And I think one of those websites is called Poses. And so if you take your time to look through some poses, you will find the elements that of a human body that will then help your artwork have a more realistic look, even if it's stylized, but then things will look like they're fit and it'll look like it has volume. You know, there's nothing wrong with flat drawings, but as time goes on, you want your characters to look like they live somewhere, like they exist, like you can reach out and touch them, like they can talk back to you.
That initial sketch, when you first shared your screen, I can almost see it moving the character. It reminds me of, you know, where you're on a computer game and you're selecting your character and they're kind of just moving on the spot. I can imagine they're doing that. Yes. No, thank you. And so that's just because I'm used to a process that gives my art or my characters that little bit extra. So that's good. Thank you for that. And so now when I get to this point, now I have a body. Now I have a proportion that I like, and I will make another layer. And this is the part where, you know, you can't rush this process. Sometimes we start a drawing, and it happens to me where you're kind of just not thinking about it. You know, you're drawing and sketching, and before you know it, you're like, oh, this is amazing. This is a beautiful piece of work. And then there's sometimes when you're like, no matter how many times you draw something, it's just not coming out. It's not coming out. And so this is why you can't rush it, because sometimes it takes a whole lot of elements, a whole lot of sketching over and over to get to that part of the drawing where you're like, okay, this is what I want. And if you draw it over and over and over, multiple layers, you can work out your feelings and emotions, because, you know, I'm an emotional person too when it comes to my drawings, and frustration can sit in quick
when you're drawing something and that's not it, and that's not it, and that's not it. And especially for us, you know, that are doing it live, and then people are looking at you, and so you start sweating. You're like, this finger doesn't look like a finger, you know, and people are watching. So you can't quit. You can't be like, you know what, I'm done with this drawing today, let me walk it off. You can't, because people are watching. And so you have to work it out. You're like, okay, you know what I'm gonna do? I am going to focus and breathe and relax and laugh it off a little bit. And then I have to, especially, you know, when you decide to be a professional, I have to rely on my skills. I have to trust myself, and I have to trust my process. That's why I have a process, so that this process can keep me focused and building on the drawing. And you know, and sometimes it's okay if your process says, you know what, let me scratch this, delete, start all over. But the process also helps when, if we were to stop right now and you say, okay, let's come back in 1 hour and let's take a break, let's go for lunch and so on. And then I come back in 1 hour, I can pick up where I left off and not have to think about what was I doing here, because I have a process. So I can jump right back into this drawing.
That's really reassuring, I think, for people to hear.
Yes. The process part, or the part where we're going to take a break and come back in an hour?
Probably both, but I meant the process part for sure. It's like having that thing you can fall back on.
Yes, of course. And you need those. Those are, I had a word in my mind right now and it's gone, but those are tools that we have to find for ourselves. And every artist has their own process. Every artist has their own techniques. And you'll talk to me and I have one process. You'll talk to a different artist and they'll have another process. And all in all, it all comes down to, you know, what works for you. What are you going to try that you're going to say, you know what, I like this process, this way of doing something. And so, yes, I rely a lot on my process. And like I said, a professional, right? So there's a level of talent and professionalism that I demand of myself. And so that's when, you know, you can't come back to a client and say, well, I had a bad day and I couldn't draw. You know, it's like, no, that client gave you money and they want to see the work that you agreed to do in exchange for that money. Right. And so then that's when, regardless of how you feel, regardless of what's going on, you're going to have to, and here's, let me save this. The Fresco is tripping out a little bit. Come on, Fresco. And that's when those processes come into play, because now you are a professional. And I like to look at professional athletes in that way, where they walk out into the field and they play a professional game. However, these athletes didn't just get up out their bed and walk off onto the field. What they did was, and I'm pretending to know because I was not there, so I don't know. I just kind of imagine, you know, they showed up to the training facility, they did some stretches, they did some workouts, they went out there and practiced for a couple hours, then got geared up, and then went out into the field to play. And we as professional artists, or as artists who wants to figure out a process for themselves, have to also go through those steps. And I like to look at these layers as that way, where now, as I have this artwork that I need to work on, I am going to work through my process to not get off the bed and start drawing, which is okay if you can do that. But I want to go ahead and get up off the bed, maybe watch some TV, maybe read something, maybe start some sketches, unrelated sketches, get into a community where I am talking to other artists about art. And then I have my full creative powers on and I say, let's go, let's do this. And then you go through that other process when you're drawing, so that then you're working at your highest level at that time.
Love that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry if I'm talking a lot.
No, I like it. It's so good. And I think we kind of keep coming back to that being part of a wider community, right? We can inspire each other, we can learn from each other. And this is why we do these sessions, because actually, when you talk about needing to walk away and come back and not always getting it perfect, people like that stuff. Like we have experts that join us live and they make a mistake live, and people love it because they're like, oh, you're a human being.
Yeah.
You do the same as me.
Yes, that's right. And I feel exactly the same way to this day when I look at other artists and I look for their sketches. It's like, your finished work is beautiful. That's amazing. I don't even know if I could do that. But if I can look at your sketches, I can see where your artwork began for that piece, and like, oh, I can draw that. Like I can do the mess up part, the ugly part. If I can do the ugly part, then that means I can follow the process and get to your level. That's right. It makes us all seem like part of the same, and we can identify with each other. I love that. I love that. So let me show you. So once I get to, so back on track, once I get to this point that I have the full body, I have all my elements, I worked out some of the design things, and, you know, just looking at this skull right here in the middle, I kind of like the skull, but it's still not the skull that I really want to I want to see. It's like there's some things that I wish were better. There's still some elements here and there, but I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start solving some of these issues when I get into the inking process. And so we just say the word inking to talk about a different layer, a different level of the process, but there's no ink involved. However, in my example and for today, it's the vector drawing process. And what I like about Fresco is that it has those vector brushes, and it means that once you're done with that vector drawing in Fresco, you can export into Illustrator, and you have all the anchor points and all the shapes that you're gonna in your drawing, that it makes it, that will then, you can then blow it up to whatever size you want, and it'll still be crispy and clear. So, but what I like about Fresco also is that these vector brushes are, you draw with them, and so your drawing looks organic. You know, if you draw in Illustrator, it can sometimes look a little stiff, and sometimes that's okay for some of the other art that I do. But there's some drawings that I want them to have a little bit of imperfections. I want that line to not look super clean and straight. You know, I want it to look like somebody actually drew that line. And so then that's when I start this process here. All right, so this is the inking or the vector part of this drawing. So let me go ahead and turn on this shape. Let me see. Come on. Can I do it? I need to do them all together. All right, then. Let me go ahead on group layers and turn these off. Now, what you're looking at is several layers for this one drawing. And the reason I use several layers is because, and even this face, what I do is I start the face details in one layer, the headdress details in another layer, the feathers a different layer. And that way, when I draw something, then I can then, when I draw something on one layer, I'll start another part of that drawing on a different layer. And as I draw on a different layer, even if it crosses that layer, the artwork on a different layer, no matter what I erase on one layer, it won't affect what happens on another layer. So here right now, I am going to make an adjustment to my brush. There's a little pop-up window on the bottom left. Once you select your brush, you can also select your color. And if we have a color wheel, so you can move your mouse or pen to wherever you want the color to be. We also have a slider for the size of the brush. And so I think I was drawing this at 1.5. And I work with very big canvases. But when it comes to vector, it really doesn't matter because you can always stretch it big and small. But when you start with a bigger canvas, then that one matters a lot. And so you're not stuck at one, and your line thickness is like this. You're then able to.
Detail looks amazing, by the way.
Oh, thank you, and thank you very much. That was those 5 hours last night. It took 5 hours. Of course, it was a whole lot of talking, but yes, it was a lot of detail, a lot of work in here, and but because I like it, it doesn't feel like work. It's so I feel like I'm in kindergarten every day. I don't know. I do feel that way sometimes. And
Beth
so
says, how does he convey so much in such few lines?
yes, a friend of mine last night was talking about how in the 70s and 80s comics there was so much line work. I think his name is Tom, and he said that there's several comics, and he mentioned a comic book artist, and I forgot his name now, but that's exactly what I remember looking at comics, like so many little lines, and then when you look at all those lines together, it's like it's a clear picture, and so I became a fan of line work for a early age, and now I can't do a drawing that doesn't include a lot of lines. I can't help it. I really try. So here's one layer for the head. I then start on the next part of my drawing, and I start working on the body. So now let me turn down the layer for the sketch so that we can start seeing more of this. And then so little by little, I start building on the drawing. And so when I did all these hearts and hands, I drew them individually in a layer by themselves so that I can shift them around. This is where I work a lot in composition. Whatever I did not solve in my sketching process, now I'm looking for it here in the vector process because I can work with layers. And I do that with sketching where I'll do a sketch in different layers. Different parts of the body will be in a different layer so I can still move things around. But now in vector, now I'm really going to have to solve this because I will not go into coloring with something sticking out in the drawing that says, no, Dan, this is not it. And so I work on the collar. Let's see what's next. What's up here? I then started working on and I think I worked on a different order than what these layers look like, but I worked on the snake, and some of these lines were overlapping. And so that's okay because it's on a different layer. So when I start erasing some parts that overlap, it does not affect the feathers of the headdress because those feathers of the headdress are on a different layer than the snake. Then here goes another snake. Come on, snake. And yes, come on, Fresco. It's a lot happening right now. I have Illustrator open too, so this computer, I can hear the fans. It's all good.
To take off.
Yes,
and
that's right.
Honestly, like I knew before this session that you were talented, but seeing your work this up close, like your talent is kind of blowing me away. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. All right, that feels good. Say more. Tell me more. No. What else? Thank you. So let's take a look at the next layer, and I'm trying to turn on layers, and it may be a point where let me close Illustrator because we'll get to that in a minute. And I think we ran out of time, so I need to hurry up. Come on, computer.
We got about 20 minutes.
Okay,
like 15, 20, if that works.
All right. Yes, that works. It's not the 5 hours I'm used to now. It's good. So now here on this layer, I think it's one of the legs. Let me try to make this smaller. Here we go. And boom, there goes one leg. And then another layer. Come on, Fresco. This doesn't happen all the time. I'm sorry. This doesn't happen all the time. It's because so much is happening on the computer right now. But there goes another leg. And then, yep, it is slowing me down. Come on, there goes the arm. As you see, it's a different layer. So that way I can work on individual parts and not affect the line work that's right beside it. There it is. This is the skirt. And oh my God, this skirt by itself, it was
the detail.
Yes. And you know, I catch myself doing this to myself in that I know when I started drawing and I'm looking at it, it's like, okay, I'm going to try to go very little detail because there's artists who do very little detail and it still looks amazing. Disney is one of those art styles. Cinderella and Snow White and all them. It's like just some few lines, and it's the person. And so I want to push myself sometimes like that. And I say, I'm going to go slow and I'm not going to do a lot of detail. And then I find a part of the drawing where I get caught up and I'm starting to go all in on the detail. And then I remember, wait a minute, I wasn't supposed to do detail. And now that you already started, you're like, well, it's not going to look right if one half of the body has detail and the other half does not. So then you have to jump in and go at it. And so now here is my skull right there that I started before. And so now it looks a lot different than the skull that I had in the beginning in the sketch. And so that's one thing that I like about my process is that in the beginning of the drawing process, I do not want to think about all these details and what the skull should look like. I just know there's a skull going to be there. I don't want to think about all the details in the skirt and the snakes. I'm going to just get the figure out. I need to get the figure out right now. And then I slowly build on the drawing. And so that lets me be free in the beginning so I can then ramp up in my process. But if you start thinking of all those details at the beginning, then you'll never get the drawing going. You're going to get stuck. And so I recommend we get started, we get going, and slowly build up. So now this is the next big important part. Let me go ahead and save this. Now I am on Windows. This is a Windows computer, and I am on a Cintiq. If you are on the iPad, on the top right side, there is an export icon, and you can export on Windows and export as a PNG, JPEG, PSD, and PDF. Also, without using that export, if I was to close this drawing, open up Photoshop, and in your Creative Clouds tab in Photoshop, you'll be able to see this drawing and pull it into Photoshop. However, on the iPad, and I'm going to go ahead and close this now. On the iPad, I can open this drawing and send it off to Illustrator. I don't know why Adobe has not made that possible with on the Windows version of Fresco, but it is on the iPad version. So I am on my iPad. Here's my iPad. I don't know if you guys can see that. There it is. And it would be too much to connect all these screens. So right now, trust me when I say there's a button that says send to Illustrator. I just press that button. Oh, of course, it says not connected to the internet. So of course, there has to be a glitch because I'm live. It's like, thanks, Dan. You're putting me under pressure.
It's just the magic of live, people.
That's right. So let's go ahead and open the Fresco file. Hit that send to Illustrator. It is turning because it's connecting to the Creative Cloud. And so I have a Creative Cloud account, and my devices are connected to that same account. So there it is. It says document sent. So it says document sent on the iPad. And for some reason, my Mac over here on the side just turned on Illustrator when it should be popping in here. But because there's the same account, it will pop in here also. There it is.
Really?
Yeah. So now I need to put my glasses on. Excuse me. Here we go. Hit OK. And now there is the Illustrator file, the vector file for that drawing that I did in Fresco. And if you want to see if this is a true vector, let me click and drag across the image and look at all those anchor points.
Wow.
I don't know about you, but to me, that is impressive. Look at that. Damn. What?
It's getting so smart, the software, what it can do.
Yes. And Adobe has been doing a great job of making sure that all these programs talk to each other. And I've been waiting for this day because before you would have to export a file, save it to your computer or device, move that file, and I use Dropbox, so I found a way to bridge my devices. But you would email the file to yourself, open the email, download it to your computer, open a new program, And it's like your creative process is kind of slowed down and you have to do other things. And me, I just want to keep on drawing. It's like, oh, okay, here I am. Here's all my layers. I will lock all those layers. New layer, put that layer 10 down in the bottom. I will name my layers eventually, but not right now. And then boom, I can either use the pen tool. And let's go like this here. Boom. And I'm just going pretty fast. Bam. Find my color. Oh yeah, that's good. Cool. I like that reddish color. Nice. Bam. That's one layer. Next layer. I do now this process of coloring, I also have to use different layers because later on, and this happens with client work more often than with your personal artwork, the client will say, hey, Dan, that looks good, but can you make the headdress instead of gold, can you make it green? And so you as the freelancer, you're like, no, because it's yellow. No, what you do is you say, yeah, sure, no problem. I can make it green. And so then you select that layer and say, okay, headdress, you're going to be green. Got it. So you want to keep different colors in different layers so that when it's time to make edits, you have it makes it real easy to go back and make those edits. So layers is super important. And so I'm just going to move pretty fast through this because we have another drawing in the oven that we're going to bring out, just like a cooking show, because cooking shows. Yeah, that's right. That 5-hour cooking process has to get down to 30 minutes. And so then
tasty illustrations.
That's right. And so here it is. And so I get to a point where now I have all my layers and all my colors, and I do a ton of, and I use a lot of layers, a ton of layers. And then I get into shading and highlights, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. And as a matter of fact, it's okay now. Oh, well, no.
I wish we had more than 10 minutes. I could honestly watch you work for hours. I'm going to have to attend one of your other lives.
Yes. Like well, you are welcome to join me in my other lives where I do take hours and hours.
Yeah.
So here it is.
We're going to link those up as well.
Yes. Come on in. And then we have a Discord where we spend a lot of time throughout the week working on artwork that we share our screen with each other so that we can share that creative experience with each other. And so here we go. Let's turn off a few things here. Boom. Boom. Here we go. And so here right now, what you're looking at is some of the solid colors and some of the gradients. Let me turn off some of these gradients. I did name some of the layers, and a ton of layers I didn't. I just left it. So this is Penny. She is one of the characters in my graphic novel that I've been working on for many, many years. Don't ask me when it's going to be complete because that is a question that I'm not prepared to answer. However, I have been working on a couple of stories, and so her name is Penny. And in this world called the art life, artists are the superstars. They are the athletes. They are the WWE of that society. And so Penny is the current champion. And in this version of her, I added a lot of Azteca Moderno elements. So you have the arm. It has some Aztec stuff. The other arm does too. The headdress has feathers. And then red and green is the Mexican color. So I added that in there. And so now that I have my colors in, now I'm going to start mixing in some gradients, some shadows, and some highlights. I sometimes work on the coloring inside of Fresco. Sometimes I do it here in Illustrator. It depends on my speed at that time of my deadlines and what I'm trying to, the effects that I'm after. And so I have all of this filled in. So there's the outline. And so let's go ahead and take it all out. So this is exactly like that drawing we just brought in here, right? So we have the outline, lock it, brown skin, colors, red and and green, and those happen to be in the same layer. A pink for the pencil, blue pencil. Blue is my favorite color. Some eyeballs, and
this is where we're just adding the flats, basically.
That's right. These are correct. That's right. So these are the flats, little by little, bam, bam. And I changed my mind on the color. Do not mind my colors. They're gonna always be messy, and I'm okay. I like to call that my art style, because when it comes to color theory, I feel like that's a lot of brainy work that I don't want to get into. And so I'll just jump into a color and say, well, that kind of looks okay. And if it doesn't look okay, I'll change it. And I take suggestions from people. And so if they give me a suggestion, I'm like, okay, let's try that. And so I do my colors, and then I'm going to jump in and they'll see, what is this here? So now here goes some shading in the face. Look at that, flat shading. And this shading is nothing but a gradient of the same layer. So what I do is I make a copy of that same layer. And on that new layer, I check my gradients. Boom. And I also adjust my transparency. So I do a blend mode of multiply. I do an opacity of 53. And look what happens here. Here's at 100. Here it is at 31%. And so that looks a little bit okay at 28%. That looks all right. And so I can keep playing with it till I get a tone that I like and say, okay, cool. So 47% is good. And once I like it, I lock it. And you have to lock your layers, because you don't want to make a mistake and affect a different layer, a different part of your drawing, because then that's going to cause a disruption in your flow. You want to do all the things in the front end of your process, so that as you work through that creative process, you stay in that flow. You want to stay in that flow. So I start adding more and more shading to all the different parts of the drawing.
And that's just linear gradients, right?
That's it, linear gradients. However, there are some parts that have let's see, here it goes. This is one of those. Oops, come on. It's sometimes I use freeform gradient. And so freeform gradient, like this one right here. Boom. I love freeform gradient. Oh my God. I'm telling you, when they came up with this, because there's been other processes for doing creating a grid inside a shape and then adding different colors. So when they did this freeform gradient, I was like, yes, now I can play with tones, kind of the way watercolor artists do and pixel artists do, where they'll have a little bit of a reddish in the nose and in the cheeks, and and it's like just a touch. And it's like, I want to draw like that. I want my art drawings to look like that. And so now freeform gradient gives you that power. So let's go ahead and zoom back out so we can take a look at all the different other elements here that we have. So boom, the body. The body has some gradients also. And I've already identified the left-hand side of the drawing to be the light source. So the right-hand side of the drawing has some of that shadow. And so then there's the light source. Look at that light. There goes the light. And it just starts to
that
give
adds
the
so
drawing.
much.
Yes, extra volume. And I can do more details in that light color, so that I don't have to spend a lot of time with regular details with the line work. And then I add shadow. Boom. And now
so with the light source, you did the initial one with the linear gradients.
That's right.
And then did you do like a rim light kind of thing to make it pop even more?
Right. I did. And what I did is I used I went in and drew just highlights. I drew highlights, so that not only do we have a gradient already giving us the impression of shadow and light, but the highlights bring extra details out from the lighter side, so that your eye is fooled into thinking, this could be 3D. This is actually standing out.
So super quick, if you're happy to share, how did you do the highlights? Because they added so much depth and made it look so much sharper.
Look at this. It's just drawing. It's a white. So here, let me clean up go back to there it is, screen transparency. Let me do normal. Let's do opacity 100. Boom. So it's also this these highlights is nothing but a color that has gradient, right? And the lights is still coming from the left. But once I select, once I sit here and let's do a quick piece. So let's go with the brush, but I'm gonna use the Blob Brush. If we use the Blob Brush, and yeah, I should have talked about that. There's the Blob Brush. The Blob Brush allows us to draw on the screen with shapes. And so my pressure is 4, and my size is 4, and I have set to pressure. This works when you have a drawing device. And so now I sit here and I draw. And so what I do is I go around different areas of the drawing and draw, right? And so let's draw detail here, detail there. So now that I have all these little pieces, and because it responds to pressure.
And you're not just painting in white, you're painting this gradient, like white to black.
This gradient, yeah. And you know, and it could all be white.
It's like metallic almost.
Right, that's right, because it's just really white and black. But I can just make it a one color. So it's all so here it is, all black. It's all black. And so it looks crazy. You're like, damn, what are you doing? This is nuts. Like, yes, I know, but it's not over yet. But there I go. Here's a look into all the different parts that I did to draw that in. And
I've
once
never seen anyone do this technique quite like this. This is really interesting.
Oh, thank you. Once you have all the elements of where you want, and you know, at no time do I focus on one thing at a time. I'll jump around how I feel. But once I add in all these elements in here to this layer, then I'll say, okay, let's turn this layer, and I can turn it into white if I want. Boom, and then it looks like this. So that's another technique that I've used, where I will use the white highlights, select that whole layer, and now you start playing. This is where Illustrator on desktop is amazing. Now I can start turning down the opacity, and so now it's not so harsh. The highlight is not that harsh, and so it has a cool hue that kind of just changes. Each highlight changes with the color behind it. And so I'll keep playing with it. Well, let me go ahead and do a screen and turn that down a little bit. 45%. Okay, I like that. That's cool. Okay. But what if I go into the gradient and make it a gradient and still have the screen and have the 45% opacity? Oh, it's smoother, much smoother. So let me hike up the screen opacity to 60s. Oh, now we're talking. Now that looks good. And I do the same thing with the shadows. Create a shadow layer, and I'm going to change the color to black. You know, and so when I'm making this the shadows, it looks like this. And it's like, that's not right. But that's okay, because as you sit there and work through all of these little pieces, once you're done, then you play with the layers. You play with the layer settings. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw on the gradient. Okay, that looks cool, but it's still kind of flat looking and not so good. All right, so now let's go ahead and select that layer. You always have to select your layer, otherwise things are not going to change. Let's go to multiply. Oh, now the multiply blend mode of this layer reacts with the colors in the other layers. Like it, I like it. Now turn down the opacity. Let's go. Oh, so now it's like, it just gives the drawing so much more dimension. I don't know where I saw this technique. I don't even know if I saw this technique, or it's just my way of finding the shortcuts that will give my drawing that much more life and kind of get close to what pixel artists do. When you see these artists who use watercolors and brushes and pixels and oils and all this other techniques digitally, you're like, what is going on here? And I said, there has to be a way to do it with vector. So, of course, I throw my name in. I start doing some backgrounds. There it is. So come on, background, boom. Add a gradient to break up that background. Add another gradient on that first gradient. And then I think I added, yes, I added a white shadow on it, a black shadow.
Amazing.
Yes, I did do a black shadow. There is a white outline. So let me turn that off. So here we go. A white outline, a dark shadow. So then all underneath it, it on the top, it looks like there is some kind of, it gives you a whole different dimension.
Incredible.
And so I ordered some stickers last night for this piece right here. If anybody wants some free stickers, you find a link to my portfolio on Behance. There's a contact form on it. Drop your address. This is real. This is real life. You drop your address, and I will mail you some free stickers. This is for me to give to everybody and for having me here.
Thank you. That is so, so kind. Everyone go take up Delta Tango Mike for that incredible offer. So what an amazing session. My mind's a little blown right now. Like the detail, the lighting, your whole workflow was incredible, man. So thank you so much for joining us. This was such a pleasure, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you. If you guys have any questions, I know I ran over time. If you have questions, send them my way. I am Delta Tango Mike on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. DaCreativeGenius on Behance. Come on through, join the Discord, send me your questions, and get into the conversation. And I am happy to share my process with you.
Appreciate that so much. Yeah, I want to encourage everyone, go and support and follow Dan. What an incredible artist. Go follow him on all the platforms. Go support him. And thank you so much for your time today. We'd love to welcome you back in the future.
Thank you. Thank you to you. Thank you to Design Cuts for having me. I appreciate this. Like I said, I love to talk. And so this is my perfect playground. All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate you.
Of course. No, our pleasure. And your passion's infectious. So it was great watching you work. And like I say, we'd love to have you back in the future because I think your style is amazing, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care, everyone. Please go support again Delta Tango Mike. The links are there in the chat. Click through, get involved, get your free stickers, go to Discord, and please go support this incredible artist. And have a great day, everyone. Thanks again.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.